Russian President Vladimir Putin has thanked North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for helping Russian troops push Ukrainian forces out of the Kursk region. Putin praised the heroic fighting of North Korean forces and their country's friendship. North Korea has become a key ally, providing troops and weapons to support Russia against Ukraine. Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich has announced plans to annex large parts of the West Bank, excluding 6 major Palestinian cities. He claimed the move would bring maximum territory and minimum Palestinian population under Israeli control. It remains unclear if Prime Minister Netanyahu supports the plan. The UN has said at least 21,000 children in Gaza have been disabled since the war with Israel and Hamas began in October 2023. Over 40,500 children have suffered war-related injuries, with more than half left disabled. The UN also criticized evacuation orders as inaccessible for people with disabilities. The European Commission presented the EU-Mercosur trade deal for approval, promising possible limits on farm product imports to soften France's opposition. The deal, reached last December after 25 years of negotiations, would create the EU's largest trade accord. It still requires votes in the European Parliament amongst the EU governments to take effect. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has spoken on Fox News about the strike in Venezuela, saying Maduro faces important decisions. He's refused to discuss specifics of how the strike was carried out, but confirmed assets are gathering in the region. He also clarified that the video of the strike was not AI generated. U.S. President Donald Trump will meet Polish President Karol Nawrocki at the White House, focusing on Russia's war in Ukraine and energy security. Trump previously backed Nawrocki in Poland's election against centrist rival Donald Tusk. The meeting will include Oval Office talks and a private lunch. Thailand's Pheu Thai party submits parliament dissolution for royal approval. Opposition has backed the Bumje Thai leader Anutin for the bid of Prime Minister. He plans to hold a House vote and continue with the minority government. A bomb blast has killed at least 11 people and injured 30 others at a rally in Quetta, southwestern Pakistan, commemorating nationalist leader Sardar Autullah Mengal. Authorities say it appears to be a suicide attack, with investigations underway and no group claiming responsibility. Our top focus right now. In a significant offer, Russian President Vladimir Putin has invited Ukrainian President Zelensky to Moscow for a meeting, stating that if the meeting is well prepared, he is ready to hold talks. Putin emphasized that if common sense prevails, an acceptable way to find an end to the conflict can be agreed upon. He claimed Russian forces are advancing on all fronts and accused the enemy of trying to regroup to plug holes in their defenses. Putin also held those who ignored Russia's security interests responsible for the crisis. Despite the tensions, Putin addressed and expressed hope, saying that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he hopes to speak with the U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday to push for new sanctions against Russia. During a visit to Copenhagen, Zelensky emphasized the importance of security guarantees for Ukraine, referencing bilateral agreements with countries like Denmark. Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung joins us on the broadcast. Mr. Leung, I have to understand from your perspective, what do you make of, firstly, a Russian proposal to hold talks in Moscow?
The Ukraine war is, in fact, has more into a prolonged war of attrition. Attrition means to what extent the parties on both sides can withstand the economic and costs, as well as the supply of armament, as well as bodies on the battlefield. I think that initially Russia is calculated that he could just, it would be just a cakewalk But then over 3 years down the line, Russia has now been able to reject its economy, and in fact, it grow its economy by supplying its energy export to other countries, and bypassing the kind of sanctions. So meanwhile, Ukraine is fast running out of bodies on the battlefield, and also money. Of course, the European Union are extremely worried about Russia. But on the other hand, 3 years down the line, there's electorate becoming less supportive of putting blood and treasure on the battleground, which has been seeing no end in this kind of conflict. Now, as far as President Trump is concerned, the biggest supporter of the war, even before Trump 2.0, has been the United States, supplying armament. Of course, the armament has got to be bought, but also supplying money to Ukraine. But President Trump 2.0 is getting tired of that. He wants to end the war, and therefore arranging direct talks with Putin, even behind the backs of his European Union allies, so as to end the war and hopefully get his Nobel Peace Prize, and to transfer his attention to the Asia Pacific. But first of all, of course, he laid hands on the rare earth resources on Ukraine through American largest asset company, BlackRock. So you can see that there is a gradual a lack of interest in carrying the war on the part of the Trump administration. But of course, he wants to be seen to be dictating the terms. And of course, Russia is now being able to sustain the war more than before, but it's not winning everything. But Putin's obviously wanting to push the envelope on the eastern front, as it were, the Donbass area. And he wants to control as much as possible that area. Why is that area important? Because it's got access to the Black Sea, and also because it contains a great deal of mineral and other resources in Ukraine. And so he's content to holding on, of course, not only Crimea, which is the other side of the Black Sea, but also the Donbass area. And out of the Donbass area is, of course, have a lot of Russian-speaking citizens. So I think that this is the dynamics involved. By inviting Ukraine to Moscow, and of course he had already touched base with President Trump, is to impress on Zelensky that he just can't carry on relying indefinitely on the European Union's indefinite support in this endless war. And so ending the war on terms acceptable to Putin. Acceptable means holding on Ukraine, Donbass area, and a commitment not to join NATO, because Putin sees the Ukraine's joining the NATO as an existential threat on its doorsteps. So these are the dynamics involved.
Well, Mr. Leung, stay on with us as we shift our focus to more news. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, has made a statement regarding the meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The statement referred to this meeting as a direct challenge to the international system. The European Union has long accused China of challenging the international rules-based order through its coercive trade practices, military expansionism, and systemic human rights violations. The EU has earlier stated Chinese actions as a systemic challenge to its own values and strategic autonomy. The meeting between Russia, China, and North Korea is being seen with the lens of an attempt to create a new world order. Listen in.
Looking at President Xi standing alongside the leaders of Russia, Iran, North Korea in Beijing today, these aren't just anti-Western optics. This is a direct challenge to the international system built on rules. And it's not just symbolic. Russia's war in Ukraine is being sustained by Chinese support. These are realities that Europe needs to confront.
Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung with us on the broadcast. Mr. Leung, I want to understand from your perspective, interesting position being taken there by the EU as well as the United States of America. Do you view this meeting between China, Russia and North Korea as an attempt to send out a signal to the US and to the EU, or is it simply three nations with common interests trying to come together?
Well, first of all, the so-called world order, founded and led by the United States since the end of the Second World War, is based on commonly accepted rules upheld by the United States as a benign, I would stress the word benign, hegemon, because there was no other country on earth able to shoulder this worldwide responsibility. Because American is the world's largest military power, and also the dollar remains highly dominant, and is the largest economy. But then over the years, especially with Trump 2.0, this rule-based order has been totally discarded in favor of American unilateralism, coercion, and bullying, not only against China, as Russia as Americans' existential threat, but against Americans' long-term allies, including its largest border nation, Canada, trying to touting his wish to make Canada the 54th state of the United States, but also Greenland, and of course other countries' sovereignty and development issues. So I think that China is now touting itself as the defender of the old world order based on rules, and is rallying countries in the global south, which of course suffering from this huge disruption and indiscriminate tariff war left, right, and center, including Americans' allies like India and of course European Union and other countries. Now, as the military parade celebrating end of the Second World War is not just the Second World War that is a subtext. It is the demonstration of China's capability to pursue its China dream of national renaissance, away from the century of humiliation at the hands of invaders like Japan, and of course, if we trace back earlier during the Qing Dynasty, the 8 countries in the West united to invade Beijing and ransack the imperial palace. So this is a century of humiliation which is now being purged by demonstration of China's military capabilities. Now, these military capabilities is no ordinary capabilities in the 21st century. It showcased China's long-range military intercontinental missiles with multi-navigable, separately navigable warheads, which can be launched mobile land-based carriers, as well as air-based 6th-generation fighter planes and also bombers. Again, with long range, over 10,000 kilometers and more, reaching the entire world. Okay. And also the so-called FOBS, the fractional orbital bombardment system, which can circumnavigate the globe from the southern hemisphere. So this shows that the United States is taking note, exemplified by the recent decision to move its Space Force headquarters from Colorado to Aragua. So I think that this is also, the SCO is a forum to rally the global south together and try to redefine the world order towards a more peaceful and cooperative and mutually beneficial and more inclusive and fairer environment.
Okay, Mr. Leung, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World with that perspective. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says military operations against drug cartels will not end with a strike carried out on Tuesday on a Venezuelan vessel. Speaking exclusively to Fox News, Hegseth stated that the Pentagon has assets in the air, at sea and on ships, signaling more operations can be executed in the coming future. These comments come after U.S. forces killed 11 suspects in the Caribbean, striking what officials described as a drug smuggling boat linked to the Tren de Aragua gang. Moreover, U.S. President Donald Trump has confirmed the action, calling it a kinetic strike ordered under his direction. A video shared by the Pentagon shows the vessel moments before being covered in fire and smoke. Trump has also accused that the group was operating under Nicolas Maduro's control and warned traffickers not to target U.S. waters. The strike is the first known operation since Washington deployed warships to the southern Caribbean earlier this year. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Raymond Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce. Mr. Vickery, interesting developments taking place as far as America and its neighbors are concerned. What do you make of this strike?
Well, thanks very much for having me. You know, peace, like war, must be waged, and it requires a strategy, and it requires partners. Unfortunately, the Trump administration does not view the international situation, whether it be in regard to drugs, tariffs, or any of the other problems, in this sort of cooperative way. What it does is look at the world as a place to be brought under the control of Donald Trump. And everything is about a transaction. It's not about relationships. So, as has been said, when your only approach is force, everything falls within that. It's not enough just to blow a ship or a boat out of the water. You've got to have a longer term strategy as to how you're going to work with both, as they say, carrots and sticks to achieve a purpose. Unfortunately, this Donald Trump administration sees everything in terms of a one-off kind of transaction, and if your demands aren't met, that you can use force. That is going to be counterproductive in the longer run, and this movement of warships into the Caribbean and upping the ante by blowing a boat out of the water is not productive unless it's combined with some sort of overall strategy as to how you can build peace and prosperity through cooperation and rule of law. This is completely foreign to our Secretary of Defense, who has repeatedly said that the problem is that the United States doesn't use enough violence, and that the troops in the field shouldn't be constrained by international rules. So this is of a piece with what the Donald Trump administration is forging worldwide, and it wouldn't be too serious if it's just limited to one boat trying to smuggle from South America, but unfortunately it's indicative of the overall approach of this administration to international affairs.
Okay, Mr. Vickery, stay on with us as we shift our focus to more news. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, is pressing for a rapid agreement with Iran to resume inspections of its nuclear sites. The IAEA chief, Mr. Rafael Grossi, has said on Wednesday. He emphasized that negotiations on the details cannot be prolonged for months and expressed hope for an agreement as soon as this week. Grossi confirmed the IAEA has not received updated information from Iran on its highly enriched uranium stockpile since June, prior to the Israeli strikes on Iranian enrichment facilities. He noted that there is a general understanding that most of the enriched uranium remains intact, though verification is needed. Tehran recently passed a law suspending cooperation with the IAEA. Grossi has said Iran has raised concerns about maintaining confidentiality over the locations of its enriched uranium, but stressed Iran's obligations to the IAEA remain unchanged. While inspections have technically resumed at Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant, Grossi said this facility poses little proliferation concern. He is hopeful a meeting in Vienna within days can finalize arrangements to restart more comprehensive inspections promptly. Mr. Raymond Vickery with us on the broadcast. Mr. Vickery, where exactly do you see this particular issue now heading as far as Iran's cooperation with the IAEA is concerned? And what is to state that Iran can be trusted?
Iran has proven that it can't be trusted, but the trust component of the administration of Donald J. Trump is also very much in question. The problem here is similar to the problem which we've just discussed in regard to Venezuela. In regard to Iran, it is not enough simply to send in bunker buster bombs to be able to solve the problem. Unfortunately, the Trump administration in Trump 1.0 rejected the agreement which had been reached and was moving along in favor of a my way or the highway kind of approach. And now the relationship has become very much more exacerbated and difficult. And still, the Trump administration really doesn't have a strategy beyond upping the ante in terms of violence. This approach is not going to produce peace and prosperity and is going to have to be replaced by some strategic approach in regard to Iran that works with the IAEA and is able to restore some level of trust on both sides. Otherwise, the future is bleak. You have simply the Netanyahu Israeli and now U.S. approach of bomb them until they agree. And you don't have a fallback which will produce any kind of lasting peace. So this is all of a part of the blindness of the present Trump administration approach to international affairs, and needs to be supplemented with some sort of strategic and cooperative approach that can have the hopes of producing peace and prosperity in a longer run.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Raymond Bikri, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast with that perspective. Meanwhile, the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon has reported that Israeli drones dropped 4 grenades near its peacekeepers on Tuesday morning close to the southern Lebanese border with Israel. 1 grenade landed within 20 meters and 3 others exploded approximately 100 meters from UN personnel and vehicles. The peacemakers were clearing roadblocks obstructing access to a UN position southeast of the village of Marbahin when the incident occurred. UNIFIL has confirmed that the Israeli army had been informed in advance about the clearance operation. UNIFIL has now condemned the attack as a serious violation of international law and UN Resolution 1701, which aims to prevent hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. Now the Israeli military has reacted to the reports. The Israeli army said on Wednesday that its forces had not intentionally fired at peacekeepers in Lebanon. Since the November 2024 ceasefire, Israel has carried out frequent strikes in Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah, but also causing civilian harm and occupying parts of Lebanese territory. Mr. Matti Zweig, geopolitical expert, joins us on the broadcast from Israel. Mr. Zweig, I have to understand from your perspective, how exactly can these military strikes now be justified given that UN operations are also being impacted?
Well, thank you for having me. These situations have passed several times in the past, and not because Israel is targeting the UN. Israel never targeted the UN. We have enough problems of ourselves. So they also told them that they were doing some activities in the area, and maybe some fall not very far from them. So they also were explained about that. I mean, you have to understand, the UN has been there for more than 40 years. And in the last 19 years, also they have to implement the 1701 resolution from the UN, and they didn't do it. So Israel continued to defend itself from a terrorist group that was only built to attack Israel in the last 19 years. And they would permit this group to do everything. So Israel is still there, despite that they say they're going to withdraw completely. They stay in only 5 places in all 5 points. They are not really territories in all the South Lebanon. And you must understand that this is also a kind of, I don't want to laugh about this, but it's a kind of political joke, because in the last 3 months, Trump with Netanyahu and with the Lebanese and the UN, they agree to pull them out of there forever. Then, some days ago, they say, no, everybody voted that they will stay 1 year more until 2026. It's okay, we can ask ourselves to do what? The same that they didn't do in the past. Anyway, this is not the reason that some grenades dropped near them. And why I say that? Because I myself in the past was a liaison officer with the UN. There is a protocol. You always tell the UN what you are doing in the area, not exactly, of course, for not to reveal secrets, but you must do it, and they did it also this time. So
Yes.
Israel said they are excused that they fall down near them, but they didn't target them for sure, 100%.
All right. Mr. Zweig, stay on with us. In more news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has harshly criticized Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever, calling him weak following Belgium's decision to recognize Palestine as a state. On Tuesday, Belgium's foreign minister announced that the country plans to formally recognize Palestinian statehood at the upcoming United Nations General Assembly, pending some key conditions. The recognition will only be finalized after all Israeli hostages are released and Hamas is removed from Palestinian governance. Additionally, Belgium said that it will impose 12 sanctions on Israel targeting settlement imports and public procurement, while also demanding diplomatic expulsion of certain Israeli political figures. This move places Belgium alongside France, the UK, Canada and Australia in pressing for a negotiated solution amid growing international concern about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Mr. Matty Zweig back with us on the broadcast. Mrs. Zweig, I have to understand from you, is Israel losing support?
Yes, Israel is losing support, and it's losing support for bad reasons. The reason is that in any solution must be from both sides, from the Israeli side, but also from the Palestinian side. The Palestinian side in Gaza, the power or had Hamas in the past. If you are going to give them something now, politically, like Europe is doing now, because they are desperate because of this long war, or desperate because this is not finishing, or desperate for everything, is not going to help anyone to give a prize to a genocidal jihadist movement like Hamas. Because you are not giving a prize to the Palestinians in the West Bank and giving them their own country. We are talking about Gaza. Gaza conflict didn't stop, and the world is not asking from Hamas to free the hostages clearly and to dismantle themselves. So until they are not going to ask from both sides, and not only from Israel, all this is just a movement of desperation, and also internal problems with the Muslim voters in Europe that they are pressuring, and other movements that to put an end to this, only pressuring the Israeli side. It's bad for Israelis too, because the Israelis would like to have in the future some kind of agreement with the normal moderate Palestinians, but they cannot agree now to give a prize to Hamas, and that's what the Belgians are doing. And that was, of course, the kind of non-diplomatic response they got from the Israeli government, but everyone is too much desperate now, politically, to talk in good sense.
Absolutely. Mrs. Baig, thank you so much for joining us in NewsX World with that perspective. And that's all that we have time for. We will continue to bring you more updates from around the world on the other side. Stay tuned.